no numbers, there's no pictures, there's no videos, there's no gameplay. I don't like it.
Yo, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope everyone's having a good day so far. Today, we are going to get back into Sunrise Stories. I'm going to move on to the next story. Before we do get into this one, I'm going to explain like the whole basis of this story and why I decided to make it. It's not like my favorite story from all of these, but it's a story that had to be written. So we're going to move on to Lineage. So Lineage is a story that pays homage to, I believe his name is, Edwin Rosell. So, for those who don't know, Edwin Rosell was like the artist for Free Realms. He did a lot, and I'm gonna go over it because I have this on my phone. But he passed away from cancer like right before Free Realms shut down, so like months before, which really sucked. And we're just gonna go over like what he did real quick, just to give you a general idea what he did for Free Realms because it's super important. So yeah, let me read over this real quick. So I think one thing that he did was, let's see. Okay, so the main thing was he worked on the comics for Free Realms, I think was like the main thing, because he worked at Wildstorm. Wildstorm Comics is the one who published all of the Free Realms comics. He also did like TCG art, I think. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. It seems like he did. Yeah, so he did like the concept art for Free Realms. He did the some of the TCG art. Apparently, he also worked at Naughty Dog and did art for like Ratchet and Clank, which I had no idea. I love that series, but yeah, he did like a lot of he did a lot for Free Realms, and I think we just gotta like appreciate that because yeah, it's a lot. I'm pretty sure I'm right about the TCG art. I can check real quick, but yeah, it's pretty wild for what he did. Pretty wild. Oh, here we go. Is this it? Yeah, so that's about it. He was like the main artist for one of the main artists for Free Realms. He did a lot for the community, and I think it was for the game in general. I thought that was super cool to hear, just to read up on. So when writing Lineage, it like I was almost like, should I do this? Because I feel like some people might not like the idea of me writing him into my lore and stuff like that, and people will be like, well, why are you doing that? Why? How dare you? How dare you? But I thought it best to like to do that. So yeah, we're gonna get into this. I'm gonna kind of explain like down the list like why I wrote about what I wrote about. But yeah, this whole story is paying homage to Edwin Rosell. So yeah, let's get into it. I arrived in Sanctuary for the first time in over a year. I used to be an artist here and sold my work to those who appreciated it till the sky turned to a dark purple. We were all scrambling to find out what was going on. Then these glum creatures arrived and started attacking the capital, which Sanctuary. That's where Edwin is based in the game, because he has his own character in game. For when he passed, they introduced his character. A dwarf destroyed all of our shops with some stone he had in his hand and continued to the World Tree. So, and all of us left to find shelter away from Sanctuary. So Again, I'm assuming you've read Luck of the Draw if you're watching this video, but if you haven't, you're crazy. Go read that, because I'm about to drop a spoiler. So the whole like premise of Luck of the Draw, the main villain antagonist was Baron von Darkcheat. I loved writing Luck of the Draw, and that was probably my favorite like chapter to write, was introducing this villain. Like, how do you introduce this villain? Like down the whole list, like down the whole way of Luck of the Draw, Baron von Darkcheat, like there's a huge battle that takes place before this, but he evidently wins this battle. It's so hard to explain, but he wins battle against all these 4 heroes and invades Sanctuary, and this is basically kind of talking about the past and how Edwin actually experienced this. He saw it with his own eyes. And yeah, he kind of just stampeded Sanctuary. So yeah, I kind of wanted to, like, again, there's a lot of like things in these stories that are going to tie back to Luck of the Draw, kind of mention things about what happened there. It's super important. So yeah, let's keep going. I went straight to Lakeshore to find my father to make sure he was okay, but when I got there, the entire lake was dried up. I went to a zoo to see if he was there, and he was up against a tree in the middle of the enclosure, barely holding on by the looks of it. I ran up to him and asked, "Father, are you okay?" He coughed and said, "No, son, I'm not. Whatever's happening in Sacred Grove doesn't look good, and those creatures are making things worse." Okay. We gotta edit. Boop. See, like, I did this during Luck of the Draw. I edited while I was reading, and it's fine if I do that, but like, it's funny that I am. Anyway, and those creatures are making things worse. He pointed out the shadowy figures to me and said, "Son, it's my time to leave this realm. I wish I wasn't running out of time, but I am. Promise me when I'm gone that you'll take care of this place. Make sure it isn't forgotten about." I hesitated, but nodded and said, "I'll do my best to make you proud." He smiled and gave out his last breath, then died next to the tree. My father and I didn't talk much, but as a kid he taught me all he knew about the wildlife in Sacred Grove. Instead of following in his footsteps, I wanted to become an artist and show the world what I could create, even if it meant traveling through Sacred Grove for inspiration. My father reached out once in a while. Once while I was in Sanctuary, asked if I would like to take over the family business, but I told him I'd already found my passion, or my career creating art. I decided to sell the paintings I created, and my business took off. I was the first merchant to sell art according to our queen, and I was so happy with the life I had. And since the day he died, I had a lot of decisions to make. It was one of the reasons I made my way back to Sanctuary. So, before we go on, the whole story here is... it was kind of not difficult to write because I found like inspiration. So there is a zoo in Lakeshore, and it'll be shown below. But there's a zoo in Lakeshore, and it's called the Durango Zoo. Okay, so I saw that zoo and I was like, I want to do something with this. I don't know what, right? And there's not much on the zoo. It's very, there's very limited information. The only thing that is there is, it's called the Durango Zoo, and the owner of the zoo is Sam Durango. So I decided to include Edwin into the story as Sam Durango's son, Edwin Durango. Now, while his real name what's funny is, like, you can look up Edwin, like his character in game. He doesn't have a last name, which I thought was super convenient because, hey, I can make this work in the lore, which is great. It's fantastic. But also it's a way to pay homage to Edwin Rosell, so I thought that was super nice. I could just do that. But yeah, so that's what the story is kind of all about. It's all about this, what happened to his dad. So let's keep going. When I arrived, Sanctuary looked like its old self, but I was still reminded of the day the sky turned dark. Coming back didn't feel the same anymore. I went to my old shop where I sold my artwork. It still looked the same as the day I left when those creatures invaded Sanctuary, except it looked like someone had repaired some damages the shop took. I went inside and felt nostalgic just looking at it all. So much time invested into building the shop, I almost felt like I should have stayed in Sanctuary before I decided to leave. But then I wouldn't have seen my father one last time before he passed. The inside still looked just like I left it. A bit messy, but it... Oh, yes, of course. Editing time. Reading helps. Reading, like, totally helps. There we go. Okay. Back to viewing. But at least nothing was damaged from the invasion, especially my art. Still intact like the day I created it. So yeah, even though Dark Cheat, like, destroyed some of the shops, or damaged some of the shops, like, his was fine. Untouched. What a miracle, right? A lot of the art I made was of the people I met in Sacred Grove. I wanted to capture them, their finest moment, as the person they were, and with every portrait, you could tell what kind of person they strive to be. In the moment, at least. Today was the day I had to close the shop and take the art I had made back to Lakeshore. So, kind of the premise of the story is, Edwin Durango's dad dies, and he was asked to take over the family business, and that was kind of Sam Durango's last dying breath. So he had to, like, make a choice, make a really, like, adult choice, like, okay, so I have to take over the zoo, I have to take responsibility. So, yeah, that's this whole thing. And what's funny is, like, you can, if you look up Edwin's profile on the FR Wiki, he actually has his art listed on the website, and for luck of the draw, I went to the website to kind of show you guys, like, all this information. I'm not going to do that this time around. I forgot to mention that, but I am going to talk about what I looked up. So, yeah, and we're going to get into, like, one of, like, if you look it up, Edwin had a favorite piece, and we're going to get into that right now. So let's go ahead and do it. While I was gathering up my art and packing supplies away, someone knocked on the shop door and asked, "Well, as I live and breathe, is that you, Edwin Durango?" I turned to look at her and saw it was Ari. I created a portrait after her, and we became close friends ever since. So, this portrait of Ari, this is actually TCG art. Again, a lot of the art or a lot of the images that are included in Sunrise Stories, a lot of them are from TCG. So this is a TCG card, funny enough, but it's also an art piece that is sold from Edwin. You can go and buy it. It's apparently his favorite one. So, pretty cool. Pretty neat. Anywho, let's continue. I said, "Yeah, Ari, it's me. Sadly, I'm only here to close up shop." She gasped and said, "You're joking, right? Your artwork has a huge effect on Sacred Grove, and there's no way you're doing that." I shook my head and said, "I don't have a choice. I made a promise to my father, and this is the only way I'll be able to keep it." She asked, "Sam? I thought he was running the zoo in Lakeshore." I sighed and said, "No, he died a year ago because of the invasion that happened. He didn't make it through like we did." She had no idea. We hadn't talked in over a year, and I mostly kept that to myself. Didn't want anyone to worry about my mental health. And I brought up that point because a lot of people, like, a lot of people hide their mental health, and mental health is important, right? So, yeah, let's continue. She said, "I'm so sorry, Edwin. Your father was a good man. He deserved to live a full life." I nodded and said, "I was frustrated when he passed. Spent most of the year away from Sanctuary, just traveled through Sacred Grove until I was ready to make a decision." She asked, "So your mind's made up then? Close up shop and do what exactly?" I said, "I'm closing up shop so I can run my father's zoo. All the animals fled after those creatures took over Lakeshore, so I have to start it over from the ground up." She looked at me funny and asked, "Why would you want to start up your father's zoo again?" I looked at a picture of my father and I, then said, "I promised him I would take care of the zoo, and I intend to do it regardless of the state it's in. If that means leaving behind the life I lived in Sanctuary, then so be it." He'd want me to put the family first, and I made the mistake of venturing out instead of spending time with him. So no more mistakes this time. She sighed and said, I understand, but don't give up your dream, okay? You're a fantastic artist, and it would be a shame if I never saw any new artwork from you. I shrugged at her and said, no promises on that, but I'll... Ooh, the butts. I always miss these, dude. Ha ha ha. Tee hee, dude. Here we go. Nice. Just little quick edits. But I'll figure things out when I get back to Lakeshore. So we left the shop and I locked the door. Put a sign up on the door that said out of business. Made me sad, but it was the right thing to do. Ari and I said our goodbyes. She gave me a hug and said, I'm gonna miss seeing your art in Sacred Grove. Don't be a stranger around here, though, for me. She smiled and waved me off, so I made my way to Lakeshore to run my father's zoo. Haven't been to Lakeshore since the day he passed, and I didn't know what to expect. But when I got there, it was pretty barren. There was only a few people in the town. Seems like a lot of people moved to different parts of Sacred Grove because of the lake being dry. So, forgot to mention this. The whole lake being dry thing, I bring this up a lot because in Luck of the Draw, Bryce goes to find... I can't remember her name for the life of me. Bryce goes to Lakeshore to find one of the heroes, and she is at the bottom of this lake, and the lake is all dried up. And I believe she explains that she got pulled to the bottom of the lake. And that was kind of like how she ended up there. But yeah, the lake was like dried up, I guess, from Dark Cheat's powers. And that's how I wrote it. And yeah, it's kind of wild, and I wanted to bring it up in the story because again, ties back to Luck of the Draw. We're tying stories together, dude. That's how it works. So yeah, let's keep going. I went over to the zoo to see how it looked from a year ago, and it wasn't looking great. It definitely needed work. There were a couple animals in some of the enclosures eating the long grass that hadn't been mowed, but the zoo still needed someone to care for it. So I mean, this picture isn't like it's like, oh, the zoo's in shambles. And no, I mean it still looks generally the same. That's literally the only image you can find of the zoo. That's on the wiki. There's like videos of like people visiting the zoo, but they're laggy and it's not much, but yeah. Still though, like, you know, it being the only image, that's all I could really use. Anyway, moving on. I was about to get to work until someone came up to me and asked, "You new in town?" I turned to see a pixie with a fishing pole in his hand and said, "My father used to live here until he passed away last year. I'm his son, Edwin." His eyes widened and he said, "Oh, you're Sam's kid. My name's Chip Numwing. Pleasure to meet you, Edwin." He dropped his fishing pole, shook my hand, then asked, "What brings you to Lakeshore?" I looked at the zoo and said, "I'm taking over the family business. I promised my father I would when he passed." He looked at me with shock, then sat on the Lakeshore docks and said, "I didn't know. I thought Sam went on a fishing retreat like we used to together." I sat next to him and asked, "You and my father fished together?" He chuckled and said, "Yeah, we met here in Lakeshore." And this is going to bother me, but we're going to fix this real quick, because I'm going to lose my mind. Caps. There we go. All better viewing. We started fishing here, and then I asked him to join me on a fishing retreat. We went to Snow Hill, Seaside, you name it. I had no idea my father fished. When I was a kid, all I saw him doing was taking care of the animals. He must have found a hobby after I left to pursue art. Chip asked, "How'd he pass?" I sighed and said, "It happened during that invasion. A bunch of creatures came out of nowhere. When I went to the lakeshore, one of those creatures stabbed him. Then he asked me to do this for him. I don't know if I can run a zoo like he wanted me to." He put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You've got some big shoes to fill, but you can do it. I've only known you for a short time, but if he asked you to do this with his last dying breath, you didn't come all this way for nothing." I stared at the zoo again, wondering if that was true, then asked, "I used to be an artist before coming here. Gave up my passion and career because I wanted to keep that promise. So if there's a reason I came all this way, it was to see the promise through. Any advice on what I should do next?" He looked at the lake and said, "Well, the way I see it, your path is like our lake here. It's huge, plenty of fish in it, and if it ever goes dry, it will always fill back up. There's something about this lake that makes me think it's magic. Only took a few months to see it fill back up after that invasion. But my advice, your path doesn't end here. It's one of many that will lead to who you're meant to be. So I'd suggest getting a head start in the zoo, see where this path takes you. I smiled and started working on the zoo in the hopes that I could keep my promise. A few months later, I cleaned up the place and got it looking like how I remembered it when I was a kid. Even had folks from around Lakeshore donating their animals to the zoo. After taking a long look at what I had done in my time at Lakeshore, I felt like something was missing. Couldn't put my finger on it, so I took a walk around the shore. The lake was so beautiful when I walked by it, it was hard to believe I wanted to leave this place to pursue what I thought would be my career. Made me think I made a mistake. I looked up at the tree homes that people had made and couldn't believe my eyes. People made homes in trees, like the Royal Palace and Sanctuary. That's when I figured out what was missing from the zoo. I ran back to my old childhood home, grabbed my artwork that I stored away, and set it up next to all the animal exhibits. I combined my passion of art and my father's zoo to create something that's never been done before. That's when I decided to open the zoo to the public. There were so many people at the zoo, looked like all of Sacred Grove had arrived for the grand opening. It really opened my eyes seeing my work hadn't gone unnoticed. Ari tapped me on the shoulder and asked, "Well, someone's been busy. What do you call this place?" I thought of the name right then and there and exclaimed, "Welcome to the Durango exhibit." There was so much excitement on her face. I could tell she was glad I had found my new passion. I knew from this moment on, I could continue working on my art and run the zoo. So thanks to my father, I can start a new path in Sacred Grove, one that leads to new beginnings and happy endings. I hope he's proud of who I've become. So, that is Lineage. That is how I want to end the story. He takes over his father's zoo and combines his passion of creating art with the zoo. And yeah, it's I don't know. I think this was a really important story to tell, just because I wanted to pay homage to Edwin Rosell and also give him breath of fresh air into lore. Because again, there's not a lot on his in-game character, so I thought it was fair to include him in this. I thought it was really, really nice. So yeah, that's Lineage. I hope you guys enjoyed the story. If you did enjoy the video, I appreciate it a ton. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!